Hello and welcome to Casual Krakoa. If you can hear me as I get this thing started live, let me know in the chat. We're going to be talking about X-Men number 20 today, the big fall event that was teased, and this will be a spoiler-filled conversation throughout, okay? Want to answer your questions, want to talk about what happened here. I'm recording this live on May 26, 2021, so if you're listening to this after the fact, the expectation is that you have read X-Men number 20. If you have not, bail hard, bail now, and come back later once you are caught up. All right, so definitely people let me know in the chat how things are sounding. If you have any issues with sound, definitely let me know, and I will try to do what I can as I get started. But otherwise, we're going to dig into this. And again, this is the second Casual Krakoa that I have done here on the Kraken Krakoa, the Kraken Krakoa videos that I do. I'm Dave. I'm the founder and editor-in-chief of comicbookherald.com, and Casual Krakoas are my Wednesday efforts to talk all things X-Men in a more casual fashion, to answer some reader and listener questions, and to maybe just get out some theories and some ideas and things that I haven't officially scripted into reviews and videos. Now, I did do an official, fairly long review of X-Men number 20 today. Obviously, it is a massive, massive event. It is a moment in X-Men comics. It's very, very exciting. So what Casual Krakoa is going to be is an attempt to really dig into. Again, I'm going to spoil this, okay? So final warning to get up on out of here if you haven't read this, what the fall 2021 X-Men event is going to be, what it means for the Hickman era, what it means for Jonathan Hickman as the writer in the X-Men line. And then if we have time at the end of this, which we may not because there's a lot to talk about, I will talk about New Mutants number 17, which also came out today and is pretty good. Poor New Mutants, it's pretty good. It doesn't quite measure up to the massive, massive questions and ramifications that are going on in X-Men number 20, okay? So thanks everybody who has joined live. It is much, much appreciated. I love having people on here to hang out with and to ask some questions as I nerd out about all things X-Men, right? So, okay, let's talk X-Men number 20. Again, spoilers, okay? Spoilers for the final page. It's been announced by Marvel now, I feel like. Basically, the challenge today was how do I make a YouTube card? How do I make titles for videos without saying the word, and I'm about to say it, Inferno. Here we go. Burn, baby, burn. We're going to have a fall 2021 Jonathan Hickman-led Inferno event. I've been saying Inferno 2.0 is coming for probably 2 years. I've been saying it forever. It's not my best sleuthing. I've done better sleuthing, right? I've had theories that I'm a bit prouder of in terms of, no one being on top of them when I was, a la How the X-Men Will Conquer the Galaxy. But nonetheless, Inferno, I've been saying 2.0 is coming. Here it is. Here it is coming in the fall of this year, and it's going to follow up on what happened in X-Men number 20 today, okay? And it's pretty exciting. I was kind of kicking myself. I was rereading X-Men number 6, which is the Jonathan Hickman written comic that is basically the build-in to X-Men number 21. You know that comic 14 months ago that is the build into the story that happened today? That's how that works in the Hickman era of X-Men. But nonetheless, I read that again this week, and I was looking at what Destiny tells Mystique. And what Destiny tells Mystique, they're lovers, they were wives. Destiny is dead in the era of Krakoa X-Men, right? As you all know, Mystique wants her brought back, of course, through Krakoan resurrection protocols. Moira McTaggart has said no precogs. Absolutely no precognitive abilities can be allowed for mysterious reasons, right? And so, as such, we can't get Destiny brought back. But what we get in X-Men number 6 is we get a flashback where Destiny says to Mystique, basically she lays out all right, this Krakoa thing's going to happen. You won't understand it now, but trust me, when you get there, you'll know it's happening. And your two options are bring me back or burn it all down. Okay, bring me back or burn it all down. And what we saw in X-Men number 6, and again today in X-Men number 20, is we saw Mystique trying to play bring me back. She was trying to get Destiny resurrected, seeing if Professor X and Magneto would actually do it. Okay, because they've been told by Moira they absolutely can't, right? So they've been lying to her, leading her on, and basically being the coldest, most calculating versions of themselves to Mystique. Who, between Professor X and Mystique, no love lost, right? Obviously, it's the Steelers Ravens of X-Men relationships. No love lost between Professor X and Mystique. But nonetheless, now her option coming out of X-Men 20. I'm not going to recap the whole thing because again, I've got a whole review video. Probably again, if you're listening to this, I hope you have read it because it's going to make more sense if you have. But Mystique failed in destroying a Nimrod. The plan failed, And what that means now is Mystique's option is to burn it all down, okay? And I was kicking myself because reading that again in X-Men number 6, I have a note here, and I can't prove this. I don't know if I recorded it ahead of time. Sometimes I theorize things in videos and I totally forget. I don't know if I did that here or not. Maybe I did in X-Men number 6. But, I wrote down, if you make the right choice, maybe you get an 11th life. I was thinking about what Destiny told her, and I was thinking maybe Mystique is the catalyst for the Inferno because Moira is not making the right choice, right? She is not making the right choice of accepting all of mutant kind, a la Destiny, a la Blindfold, precognitive mutants. Maybe the right choice to get Moira McTaggart to, or Moira X rather, to an 11th lifeline, which again, Destiny says like it's no lock, okay? But here's the thing. Jonathan Hickman did the whole reboot of Moira X, okay? House of X number 2, famously, one of the best issues in X-Men. And it gives Moira this thing where she is reborn. She is reincarnated, essentially. That is her mutant ability. She can relive lifelines, and she remembers what happened before. Okay, she remembers previous lifelines, and she's on life 10, as far as we know. And if she makes the right choice, Destiny tells her, she will get an 11th lifeline. Okay? And I'm thinking that means something, obviously. Like, that means something to Destiny, like the quote-unquote right choice. What if it's Moira admitting she needs Destiny? What if it's working with her instead of keeping her out? I kind of wonder if that's it, and I kind of wonder if Mystique burning it all down as part of Inferno is what is going to finally push Moira to that. Because, again, the big reset button, the big Life 11, reset button of X-Men, that's out there, okay? And my thinking is you don't put something like that out there unless you're going to use it. Okay? I really just think like it's just, why would you do it, right? It's going to happen. We're going to get to Life 11. Now that brings up, so okay, let's pause there for a second. The big fall event is Inferno. It's possibly called Inferno, the Books of Destiny. Okay? If you actually look at what is on the actual the teaser image, okay, it says this fall, it's got Inferno in big letters, but then like in the little sneaky, Krakoan subtext, in the cool Tom Mueller design, it's got the Books of Destiny, okay? So maybe it's Inferno, Books of Destiny, something like that. Maybe it's a maxi series, an official event. We don't totally know the details on this yet. But that is what is coming. It's pretty clearly going to be written by Hickman. It's going to really be that book, I think, that a lot of us have been looking for, that is connecting very thoroughly to the mysteries of House and Powers. I really believe that this is going to be the book that is going to tie into that very, very clearly, okay? And, all right, so reminder, the Krakoan experiment is going to lose. I had kind of forgotten this, I'll admit, right? The Krakoan experiment, Life 10, here, Krakoa, it's very easy to get sucked in, and that has been the point. That has been the point of the Dawn of X. That has been the point of Reign of X, to really embrace this era of X-Men and to see, like, what is it like with all of mutant kind on Krakoa, with all of them on this island, trying to make this work. Because if they had gotten rid of the Nimrod, for example, like they thought they had, then things are sort of going according to plan for Moira, and then the question is, like, seeing how far this Krakoa era can go. And that's what we're going to see in the Hellfire Gala, which is coming in June with Planet Size X-Men, right? As we see worlds of X start to expand, as we see galactic, if not conquest, certainly dominance, start to build for mutants. And that's all still going to happen, it seems like. But big picture, remember, the Krakoan experiment is built to fail. It's built to lose, essentially, because we know, not that like Moira's rooting for that. She's probably not. Not that Professor X and Magneto are rooting for that. They're not. They want this to succeed. But the reality of what we know about what Hickman, the seeds Hickman has laid in X-Men, is Moira can get an 11th life. Destiny has told her as much. It's going to happen. That's the Chekhov's gun of this whole thing, okay? We're going to get to a life 11. You don't tease that without the conviction to commit to an 11th life, I don't think. So we need to constantly be reminding ourselves, and I think X-Men number 20 is a good reminder, that the Krakoa era is more than anything for mutant kind. My theory and my reading of this is more than anything, like, it's information. It's learning that the mutants are then going to take to Life 11 where they actually get it right. Okay, where they actually get it right. So, it's kind of that thing I mention all the time from Fantastic Four and Avengers, the Hickman writing, is it's not about winning. It's not about mutant kind winning. Myers tells Charles Xavier, we always lose. Okay, mutants always lose. It's not about winning, it's about learning how not to lose. And that's what they're doing here in Life 10. Okay, and thinking too about Inferno and about what Destiny tells Mystique, all right, about this upcoming event. Tells Mystique, burn it all down. Why would Destiny want a successful Krakoa to burn? Okay, consider that, right? Like Destiny, this is a character who definitely we need to dig into more and definitely want to see a heck of a lot more of in the Krakoa era of X-Men. Like, and hopefully this Inferno Books of Destiny is a big part of what gets us there. Okay, but Destiny, generally speaking, is like on the side of mutant kind, right? Like her actions with Mystique, with the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, when they debut in the famous Days of Future Past storyline, you know, like there to protect mutant kind. Okay, so if Krakoa was gonna be successful for mutant kind, it would require a certain pettiness on Destiny's part to just be like, well, if I'm not part of it, forget that, burn it down. That character is not really like that, okay? So I think the reality is what Destiny sees is that Krakoa will not succeed, actually, and that mutant kind will continue to lose without her presence or without Moira changing her ways in some significant fashion, right? And we don't know exactly what that is. Whether it's, you know, the theory right now, because of the Destiny connection, is to accept precognitive mutants, okay? Whether that's Blindfold, whether that's Destiny, whether that's some time traveling mutants, we don't know exactly, right? And it brings us to the best mystery of this era, and it's why is Moira X, so afraid of precognitive mutants with her plan? Why is she so afraid of precogs? In my opinion, that is the best mystery of the Krakoa era to date, and I hope Inferno, the Books of Destiny, gives us some significant information about that, because, you know, like, we don't actually know the answer. Now, I've theorized in the past, and I'm sure there are a billion theories out there from X-Men fans, but, you know, my main theory that I keep coming back to is Moira doesn't want precognitive mutants here because they will see that ultimately her plan for mutant survival is some sort of ascension to a phalanx like a galactic intellect like a Dominion or something like that, right? Kind of a if you can't beat them, join them philosophy based on her learnings in Life 6, where she saw, you know, the Homo Novissima would have progressed, would have evolved basically beyond, like basically to godhood, essentially, to total omnipotence. And I think potentially the plan for mutant kind is to like lose all of their individuality. It's the risk of doing these things live. Even though I don't edit when I record things otherwise, so what's the difference? But, you know, it's the risk is, you know, we're losing all of our individuality, but we're going to ascend to something else. She doesn't want precogs to know that because would mutants be on board with that? That's a tough sell, basically saying like, yeah, my plan is for us to lose the Phalanx Covenant. Like, that's a hard sell for mutant kind, okay? So, but it could be something else entirely, and it, whatever the reason, it has made Moira X completely afraid of precognitive mutants. Okay, now before we talk a little bit more about Inferno, I do want to answer a question here in the chat. This is from Alma Pau, who writes in with a super chat. Thanks so much for supporting Comic Book Herald, Alma, much appreciated. Do you think that during the gala, Mystique tricks Magneto to killing a person, and then that leads into the trial of Magneto and starting Inferno? Yeah, yeah, I 100% think that's correct now. Kicking myself on that one too. Kicking myself on that one. Congrats. Take a bow. Take a bow. Mystique frames Magneto. Theorists for putting that theory out there. That feels very, very likely. That part of the build to Inferno, part of the build to burning it all down, would be Mystique saying, all right, who are the two people that have screwed me over the most here, that have strung me along, that have gotten me killed and resurrected and won't bring my wife back? And of course, it's Magneto and Professor X, right? They've been not only stringing her along, but stringing her along cruelly. I mean, there's a cruelty to what they're doing to Mystique that is, I mean, honestly, with the exception of like throwing Sabretooth in an endless exile, like, who are they being this cruel to? You know, it's a difficult question. So I think, yeah, I mean, I think she is. I think Mystique will set up Magneto. She's perfect for it, right? She's a shapeshifter. She can totally set it up so it looks like Magneto murdered someone, setting up a trial of Magneto. I think that's a very strong theory and possibility that then now we have the trial of Magneto coming in as, you know, Inferno is happening. We don't know exactly what the timeline is going to be on these two, you know, kind of event-sized things happening. But the fact that they're both going to be in the fall of 2021. So I think that is absolutely something that could happen. I had written a note here to talk about that as well. I mean, honestly, like, any theory outside of that right now feels kind of hollow, just given like it makes sense. The Mystique would strike out and that would be part of her plan. She's not going to do it as obviously, I hope. So, I think something subtle where she sets up Magneto could make a ton of sense, and that would be pretty fitting, honestly. I do have a question here too from Jesse, and this came in my review of X-Men number 20. Okay, and Jesse asks, "Is this now considered the beginning of the end?" It's an interesting question. So we have the beginning of the end potentially, right? And people have been saying Dawn of X, Reign of X, Fall of X, right? There have been some theories that like, oh, it's a trilogy. Oh, it's going to be 3 parts. I've resisted that. I really don't think I just don't think the next stage is going to be the Fall of X. It just feels too fast. And frankly, and it's kind of that David Tennant, Doctor Who, like, I don't want to go thing of loving this era of X-Men. Like, it's not just that I don't want it to end, it's just that, like, we're not there yet, I don't think. So, as to whether we're at the beginning of the end, I really don't think so. I really don't think so yet. I think what we are at, though, is probably the beginning of the end of Krakoa in Life 10. I think that is pretty likely. Potentially. I think we could be, if we start getting some of these questions answered, if we start getting some of these details about the mysteries of the Hickman era, I think we very realistically could be the beginning of the end of the Krakoa era of X-Men. I mean, I think one of the tricks is Inferno, the idea of Mystique burning it all down, of taking down Krakoa, that could definitely that could end with Moira figuring out whatever the right decision is and bringing Destiny back. And then, somehow things come to a relative close and then we get to Life 11. That could end that way. I don't expect that it will, because there's kind of just too much to keep doing. I mean, one of the tricks with this era right now is, okay, let's say Inferno was this big Life 10 ending event. In June, we have Planet-Size X-Men announcing the X-Men's plans for space, right? We have the Hellfire Gala that hasn't even happened yet. We have the trial of Magneto coming. We have Sword is barely getting started. Sword is early in its run. Way of X, early in its run. Shadow King going on with New Mutants. There's all this really interesting stuff still happening that in Inferno resetting things would, I mean, it's not impossible. And, one of the complaints of the Hickman era of X-Men, and a complaint that I've not embraced, but certainly have taken in myself, is is this too slow? Is the Hickman era too slow? And generally speaking, I would say no. But there's definitely been a tenor, probably from January through April of this year, frankly, where I think in a lot of ways, based on the way pandemic, just totally shifted scheduling and things, I think it was more, writers were kind of in a holding pattern. I think the era of the Reign of X was kind of in a holding pattern. It's something I've said a bunch now, but they launched the Reign of X too soon. The Reign of X is starting now, okay? Marvel's Reign of X for X-Men Comics is starting right now as we go into the Hellfire Gala, and that's super exciting. But the idea that January through April stories fit into that era, they don't. They're really Dawn of X stories. They're really holding pattern, kind of like post-game Ten of Swords stuff, right? So, it has felt a little slower, I think, in that regard. But now that we're here, now that we're officially getting into the Reign of X, there's just a lot to do. So I'm hopeful that it's not the beginning of the end, not really. I think probably more likely it's the beginning of the end of Krakoa Life 10, because what Hickman has said in interviews previously, and this is some amalgamation of his interview he did with David Harper on Off Panel, really good podcast you all should listen to, and interviews he has done when he's done them on AIPT's X-Men Mondays, is he says we have this reset button. like he has mentioned being when we get bored with this status quo, when it seems like things are fizzling, we'll hit the reset button. Okay, so that's what's coming next. I think it's the beginning of pushing us there, and that's exciting. Honestly, that's I will miss where we are in Life 10. Honestly, in a lot of ways, but there's a lot to talk about, and there's a lot to do in Moira's Life 11. There really just is. So that, it's extremely exciting, and I look forward to it tremendously. So good question. I do think it's a fair question, but I don't think we're there yet. All right. So in terms of what Inferno can bring, I have a few specific things I want to talk about. And let's see. We talked about Destiny. We talked about Moira a bit. Let's talk about the books of Destiny for a second. Okay. So I recap this in the X-Men number 20 video. And we see Moira in her lair in X-Men number 20 reading the books of destiny. Apparently that's what she's been doing. She is reading just these massive tomes that Irene Adler, aka Destiny, wrote, her visions of the future when her mutant abilities manifested. And these books are, if they don't, I don't know that they necessarily originate, but definitely they're given the most attention in when Chris Claremont took over. I think it's with early Salvador Larroca on Extreme X-Men. Okay, and he develops this concept of the books of destiny. And what they are is her journals of basically like what's going to happen in the future. So they've been kind of a hot commodity. It's something Exodus tries to get after in the Mike Carey run of X-Men. Just another reason why you should definitely read the Mike Carey run of X-Men if you're interested in Hickman's vision. But like honestly, the books of destiny have kind of been wasted, I would say. There's okay stories here and there, but generally they're just kind of a MacGuffin that people are after. Like, I don't know that there's a lot of really good stories that spend time talking about like what is actually in them, which to me would be the most interesting thing you can do with them. So the fact that Inferno in the Books of Destiny is probably going to tap into that a lot more is very, very interesting to me. And I do really like the idea that Moira is coming around to understanding, like, I need Destiny's visions of the future. I need what she knows. I'm just scared of her. I'm just scared of her to actually have her around because she won't allow my plan. She won't agree with it. There's a really interesting pairing between Moira and between Destiny that I would like to see play out in a way that we haven't been allowed to, because we've seen almost nothing of Moira and Destiny's been dead this whole time, right? So like we haven't really been able to see those characters. I think Inferno, the Books of Destiny, if we could tap into having both those characters around, that'd be amazing. Here's a theory. Here's a possibility. Why can't Mystique go to Mr. Sinister and get a clone of Irene Adler? Okay? We have seen Sinister has a whole clone bank. That's what he does. He has provided clones of Betsy Braddock to Jamie, right? He has maybe provided other clones that we don't know about. Why couldn't Mystique go to Sinister and get a Destiny? Maybe it wouldn't be as good as the Krakoan Resurrection, but is there a version of that we could see? You know, remember too, like Mystique and Sinister are on the Winter Council together, okay? They're on the same side of the Winter Council, and if you look at that Inferno teaser, it says like summer, winter, fall, you know, it says the seasons, the different councils. We could have a splitting of factions. And this is something I've talked about a lot, but like I think Mystique literally destroying Krakoa, I think, is fairly unlikely. I don't think it's super likely that Mystique blows up Krakoa. You know, takes a singularity bomb and destroys it and burns it to the ground. I think it's more likely that the burning is somewhat metaphorical in the sense of like Mystique, Sinister, whoever's on her side goes and basically starts their own faction, and you get a separation of mutant kind in a way that the Krakoa era has not had to deal with. They haven't had to deal with mutants who are just like, no, I'm out, and them not working together. That's been the whole thing, you know, is like all the mutants coming together. So I could see Mystique sort of starting her own factions, which would be very interesting as well. You know, it kind of reminds me too, like, so, all right, in Powers of 10, I was talking about Sinister making a clone of Destiny. Like, why not, right? Like, why couldn't he do it? He teased Inferno, okay, in Sinister Secrets, in Powers of 10, like one of the first biggest teases that we saw was Mr. Sinister saying Inferno. Basically just being like, pay attention to the word Inferno. It's going to pop up a bunch. When it happens, you know, that's going to be important. Okay. And this is the basis for myself and everyone being like, okay, yeah, they're going to do an Inferno 2.0. Like, clearly that's happening. And this has happened a number of times. Magneto said it. Professor X has said it in a quote. We've seen Vulcan say it. I'll come back to that. But okay. So here's my question. How did Sinister know this? How did Sinister know we were building to an Inferno? Like, truly, like how on earth did he know in this future? Now, one thing you could potentially argue is like, okay, the Sinister Secrets are from the future. Like, we don't have a timestamp on these, right? So these could actually have been published at a very different stage in the future. Fine. I mean, I feel like they'd have to have come out, like these Sinister Secrets pamphlets would have to have come out post X-Men 20 for this to make sense, because otherwise, like, again, like how is he like precognitively figuring this stuff out? You know, is Sinister a precog? Like, I think there's a degree to which Sinister is in on what Professor X, Magneto, and Moira are doing that has not been made explicitly clear in the X-Men books. I would not be super surprised if he had a little birdie watching these conversations between Professor X, Magneto, and Mystique, and he saw these things coming. But definitely in terms of like the Sinister Secrets, which in the moment felt like this thing where, you know, these were coming out like on bar Sinister, like fairly ahead of the Krakoa era. It's like, wait, how is Sinister actually predicting all these things? Like, is that a giveaway? Is that a giveaway that there are some precognitive abilities that Sinister is leveraging? I feel like there's something there that has not been talked about a whole lot, and that should be concerning for Professor X, Moira, and Magneto, right? Okay, so let's get to some questions here before I keep going with the theories. We have a question here from, and thanks so much for everybody hopping in the super chat, asking your questions. Everybody in the chat just chatting away. That is awesome too. Much appreciated to see people hop on here and support Comic Book Herald. I love it. So Stuart asks, do you have a theory on how Moira's 11th life could play out line-wide? This is a really interesting question. It's not something where I have done like a full deep dive thinking on it. My concern with it when I addressed it in the past was like, yeah, it's the line-wide part of it. Because for the X-Men side of things, you can do this pretty easily, right? Like at any given time, the X-Men stories are tight enough and they're aligned enough where the whole X line could reboot into an 11th life and tell the story of what that new vision looks like, right? That's not too far-fetched. The books are very closely linked. It's part of what makes this era so appealing. What is trickier is the fact that Marvel also publishes Avengers, Spider-Man, and a cool Moon Knight series coming out from Jed MacKay soon. What happens to all of these other books, right, when Moira's 11th life kicks into gear? It's a tricky question. It's a really tricky question. Now, you can go a few routes. I mean, one route, which would be super weird, is you could say, if in the 11th life they reestablish Krakoa and they just sort of do things differently, right? It's just kind of a different version of Krakoa as part of Moira's plan. You could say that all the previous Avengers Earth stuff, right, all the Marvel hero stuff happened in the 11th timeline already, right? And this would actually be like kind of a get out of jail free card for certain books like Ta-Nehisi Coates' Captain America, with, you know, what I talked about where Selene is in that book and she kills a bunch of humans and somehow is in a Krakoan prison like Sabretooth. You could be like, oh, that was life 10. You could just use it as this weird, like, yeah, if something doesn't align with what other books were doing with Krakoa, that was a life 10 thing, but everything else, yeah, it's life 11. They talk about Krakoa, cool, that's the life 11 Krakoa. You could do that. It would be weird and complicated and messy. The clearer thing that you could do that would probably be more exciting is you could do a Hickman's 2015 Secret Wars, right? And you could say the X-Men books are our best-selling books by far. They are our most critically adored. We have our single biggest writer headlining this thing. House and Powers were the biggest thing in Big Two comics since like what? Since like the New 52 launch in 2011. Yeah, go ahead. Do an X-Men event that is Marvel Universe wide, okay? And that resets everything into the 11th life. I think that could work. It would kind of be, you know, akin to like Onslaught Saga, you know, or again, like the 2015 Secret Wars, where it's just like, yeah, for 3 months, or Age of Apocalypse is a better example, 1995, right? Basically just be like, for 3 months, everything is on this build to Moira's 11th life, and it's some sort of major event. I don't think Inferno is going to be that. I just don't think we're there yet. But I think that would be probably the cleanest way to do it. I would be the most excited about that because I'm a huge 2015 Secret Wars fan. It is my favorite comic book event of all time. I don't mind other books getting like disrupted to fit into this X-Men thing because I'm the most into what's happening in Marvel's X-Men anyway. You know, like that's the Marvel Universe storyline that I'm the most invested in anyway. So if Spider-Man's like, oh, like we had this thing going with the Sinister Six, I'm like, all right, whatever. Like fit into the X-Men line. I'd prefer that. There will be series. You know, I don't know exactly what it'll be. Like Immortal Hulk is great, obviously, but that's ending soon. What's an ongoing that I love? Black Cat's really good, right? It'd be kind of a bummer to be like, yeah, Black Cat's going to get disrupted, but for the sake of the X-Men, I'll take it. So that's how I think the 11th Life thing will play out line-wide. I think Marvel will probably eventize it, which I know gets kind of negative connotations because Marvel way over abuses the event thing. But again, 2015 Secret Wars, written by Jonathan Hickman with art by Isadorovich, is the best comic book event of all time. So it might be good. It might be cool. And I hope that it is. All right. Mario Williams asks, do you think the combined power of the Omegas could take down Nimrod? This is an interesting question. I mean, I guess, yes, I do think that, but I also don't have a great understanding of how invincible Nimrod actually is. The implication from Moira's ninth life, in Powers of 10, is that, like, no one could beat Nimrod. That's the implication, but also the big battle that we see is him versus Apocalypse, and Apocalypse is not even Omega level, right? So is that a reason that the Omega levels are such a precious resource, where Professor X refers to them as the single greatest resource on Krakoa, or Omega level mutants. The fact that they're so focused on mutant technologies, right? Combining power sets. We really haven't seen Omega level mutants do that. I think that's something that's going to start to build in Planet Size X-Men, where we know that Omega levels are going to be a focus of that. We saw Magneto trying to recruit Legion, where he's like, hey, us Omegas are having a party, and Legion's like, buzz off. But I think like Omega levels actually getting together, actually having a plan, actually having some synergies, that Marvel Ultimate Alliance Civil War style, like team up kind of power, the mutant technology. I think that way they should and could be able to take down a Nimrod. I think otherwise Nimrod's actually a little more boring. Like there should be ways to take down Nimrod, but it shouldn't be easy. It should never be easy. And throughout Marvel history, I know like this version of Nimrod, this iteration is different. This adaptive Sentinel, but like we've seen, like the first instance, maybe not. I think it's first instance where the X-Men battle him. Rogue absorbs all the powers of the X-Men. Okay, and by using like one of the first instances of what we would now look back and call mutant technology, Rogue actually is able to defeat Nimrod. So we have seen Nimrod defeated somewhat consistently, and then as you progress too, as you see it, like as you get into like the 90s, Nimrod becomes like a joke. It's just like a slightly tougher Sentinel. So I think the answer to the question is probably yes, but I do think there are going to need to be some explanations for exactly how that will play out. But good question. All right, so let's talk briefly about my guy, Vulcan. Now, first thing I thought of when I saw Inferno was coming, I was not thinking about Vulcan. I'll be honest. In Inferno 2, for people who don't know, this is a repeated event. And Marvel has a kind of bad habit this past decade of repeating event names when they launch them, of just kind of like of Civil War 2, of a whole bunch of others. I mean, again, Secret Wars is a repeated event name. It just happens to be very good. But like they're repeating these things, and repeating Inferno is potentially falling at risk of that. I don't think it's going to overlap too much plot-wise. I don't think it's going to overlap too much style-wise with the 1989 event, which is actually pretty good. It's a significant build to get to that point in the Claremont era of X-Men, but the original Inferno is pretty good. I don't think it's going to be Madeline Pryor focused. I don't think it's going to be super demon focused to a degree. But if we think about, okay, what could be the things from Inferno that get reused in this thing, but in a new way, right? In a refreshed way. One of the biggest outlying plots in the Hickman era of X-Men right now is whatever the heck he was doing with Vulcan. We had a number of issues focused on Omega level Gabriel Summers, the third Summers brothers, or the original official first Summers brother until X-Men Legends re-retconned Adam X into being now the fourth or stepbrother, I think it is. But Vulcan, he's talked about Infernos too. Okay, so he's an Omega level. Now he said, inside this device, an Inferno burns. That fire matches the one inside of me. He's talking about grilling steaks. And the moment is immediately undercut by Wolverine making a joke. And I think that is to throw off the scent that Vulcan will be tied to Inferno. I really think we have to go back and look at those iterations of, Destiny telling Mystique to burn it all down, of characters mentioning in Inferno. Like, for example, when Professor X mentions in Inferno, it's in relation to artificial intelligence. I think you can bet that AI will in some way play a significant role in this event. I think if we go back and look at these clues, I think there's going to be a certain degree of like, oh, they were just telling us. Like, they were just telling us what was going to happen, but it just didn't, all the pieces weren't there yet, right? It didn't totally add up. So I think Vulcan will have a role in this event. And I think what is interesting about the Vulcan mystery is there's these weird alien creatures from, I think, the Cancerverse that found Vulcan when he goes, flying there after War of Kings, right? When he fights Black Bolt and War of Kings. He gets left in the Cancerverse. These demonic, maybe not demonic, these alien creatures find him. And they too are basically like, oh, you are burning and you're full of fire and you are ours. So if you're looking for the replacement of the Limbo demons as sort of the outside element, the external element that really escalates the original Inferno, how about these guys, whoever the heck they are, because there's a lot more information that we need about those characters that we absolutely have not seen yet, So I think that could be a definite possibility for what's to come in Hickman's Inferno as well, which would be pretty exciting. It's been a while since I've thought heartily about Vulcan after doing so pretty intensely. I don't expect that X-Men number 21, which is going to be Hickman's final issue in his, in the X-Men title officially in his run. I don't expect it will deal a lot with Vulcan. I'd be pretty surprised by that. So I think that's got to come in Inferno, because otherwise, like, what are we doing with that seed? What are we doing with that plant? It's got to come up at some point. So, okay, let's look. What other ideas and questions do people have? We have a question here from Alma. Again, thanks so much, everybody, for the support in the Super Chat. It is greatly appreciated. I'm going to take a quick swig of water here because I've been going for 40 minutes nonstop. 1 second. All right, so what do you think about Legion bringing back both Mystique and Blindfold, and maybe the Books of Destiny will coincide with Way of X? I talked in my X-Men number 20 review about, I do think a Legion Mystique team up makes a lot of sense. They both have similar earned animosity towards Professor X and Magneto. Likewise, Legion, the fact that they haven't resurrected Blindfold, his love interest, or at the very least, very good friend. Mystique and Destiny, same deal, right? They will not bring back her love interest. Both have precognitive lovers. Like, that's a strong pairing. That would make a lot of sense. So I definitely see the books, or rather the Inferno Books of Destiny. I think if Mystique is going to get mutant allies, I think Legion would easily be among them. And I think Way of X, I think everything in the X line is going to tie into Inferno Books of X in some way. Or Books of Destiny rather. Like, if there's going to be this degree of Mystique plotting the demise of Krakoa, I think we can expect every book to be impacted in some significant ways. I think probably one of the trickiest parts of this now is how will this intersect with the Hellfire Gala and planet-size expectations of, like, Sword and X-Men in Space? Because Mystique's concerns are pretty grounded. They're pretty Krakoa focused, whereas the X-Men are like, hey, we're going to space. That's going to be fun. How does all of that intersect with what's going on here in Inferno? And especially too, like, if part of the X-Men's plans right now are to, like, terraform Mars, which everybody loves talking about, right? Or putting bases and establishing new places they can go, which I think is important. Because one thing we saw in the Powers Lifeline number 9 of Moira is, like, they could flee to Shi'ar space at a point, but they had limited outlets for where they could escape to. I think establishing more of that now is definitely going to be in Mutant Kind's best interest. But, like, otherwise, like, is Mystique going to, like, how is she going to conquer all of that? We don't know. And we don't know yet, but I am very curious to see how those things will intersect moving forward. Okay, and one thing I do want to address too is on the Inferno teaser, which obviously doesn't give us a heck of a lot, but we see Magneto and Professor X, we see Mystique, then we see Emma Frost. Okay, and initially I was like, oh, Saturnaut, we're gonna do Otherworld stuff. I think it's Emma Frost, right? She's got the X on her shirt there. So despite the hair over her eye, I think it's gonna be Emma. That's actually pretty interesting, right? If that's Emma Frost, why? Why would it be Emma as one of the major players in Inferno? I think one strong possibility is that she knows. She knows about Moira. And I don't know if this, like, would go back all the way to when Magneto and Professor X go to her in House and Powers. You remember? They're like, hey, we need you to run the Hellfire Club for us, or to run the Hellfire trading business. And she's like, nah, like, I just got her to Shaw. I don't want to do that. And then they share telepathically what the plan is. Did they share details of Moira with Emma at that point, at that juncture? They may well have. Or through other means she may find out. But I think the fact that she's in the teaser image of what's to come in Inferno, the Books of Destiny, indicates to me that Emma Frost does know about Moira. And could potentially, too, Inferno, the Books of Destiny be that final dam breaking of basically, like, a Mutant Kind finding out about Moira. That would be a big revelation as well, because again, right now, hardly anybody knows. Hardly anybody knows she's even alive. So I think the inclusion of Emma on that teaser image, I'd be really surprised if that means she doesn't know about Moira, or potentially we'll find out, in this storyline. I just think that kind of feels like a lock. Okay, we have a question here from Aaron. He asks, now that we know Nimrod can have a personality and memories, powers of 10, Nimrod kind of acts like Mr. Sinister looking back on it. A little bit. That's interesting. There's definitely a lot of parallel and a lot of overlap between man-machine evolution and what Krakoa is doing in resurrecting mutants and in backing up, all their consciousness through Cerebro. So the idea that Sinister would have uploaded his consciousness to Nimrod, not actually died when he's attacked, because we only learn about Sinister in Life 9 in like a data page, I would totally buy that. I would absolutely buy that. That feels like a total Sinister move. There's a lot of parallels right now between again, the way Krakoa functions and the way this Nimrod comes online. I like that theory. I don't know exactly what to do with it, quite yet, but I do think that is true. That sort of that silliness to the powers of 10 Nimrod, that is something we would associate more with like Sinister and Hellions right now, because otherwise, the Nimrod that we see at this stage, he immediately has like a level of humanity. He just wants to make babies. He just comes out, he wants to make babies, that's it. He loses that, okay? That is lost in the singularity. And instead, now we're left with the more robotic, hunting, kind of traditional Nimrod. So how do we get from mutant hunter Nimrod to making jokes and acting like a lunatic murderer Nimrod, Sinister's consciousness? I like it. I like where you're thinking, Aaron. That could totally work. I would be very into it. All right, so I have gotten through most of what I wanted to talk about, honestly, in this build to Inferno. Again, thanks so much to everybody for joining live. This is a lot of fun to have lots of people hop on and talk comics with. If you do have any final questions here that you want to get in, or you want to get in the super chat, that is super appreciated. And thanks so much to everybody who has gotten those in. Again, I love the participation. It makes me feel good about doing these Casual Krakoas. I hope they are enjoyed. Again, this is only the second Casual Krakoa that I have done. So a little more informal than the typical Kraken Krakoa, as I just sort of scan through some images and just talk theories. But I hope people are digging them. If you are, I definitely plan to continue doing these Casual Krakoas into the future. I definitely want to do them on Wednesdays when big stuff happens in X-Men comics. Just kind of gather at the end of the day after everybody's read their comics and talk through what's going on. I think it can be a lot of fun. But let me know if you agree, and I'll keep doing them. I think throughout the Hellfire Gala in June, definitely I'm going to be trying to keep up with just about. I'm going to keep up with everything, but I'll be doing videos about all the big stuff for sure. I don't know if I'll do literally every issue. It depends how integrated it's going to be. One thing I noticed actually recently is I was putting together the Hellfire Gala reading order and checklist on comicbookherald.com, and one thing I noticed is there's 2 trades available for the Hellfire Gala right now. Okay, there's the red carpet edition, which is going to include everything, so 12 or 13 issues or whatever, spread across almost every series, and then there's an X-Men Hellfire Gala trade, which collects only Marauders, X-Men, Planet Size, and Sword. So I think basically what that's telling me is the lock for issues that are going to matter, they're going to have big moments in the Hellfire Gala, are going to be Marauders 21, X-Men 21, Planet Size X-Men 1, and Sword number 6. No real surprises there. Those are the books. Planet Size and Sword are no-brainers, and X-Men's Hickman's last issue, so of course, and everything is built to the Hellfire Gala through Marauders, right? So it's like no real surprises, I don't think. But there's kind of an indication or an implication there that the other books are going to be a little more supplemental, not necessarily as crucial to those big X-Men developments. I think, possibly with the exception of like X Factor number 10, which is both that series' final issue and the lead-in to the Trial of Magneto. So maybe that would be included in like a Trial of Magneto trade or something instead. But I did have to notice that. But yeah, I'll be covering all the big stuff. We will be doing a live Kraken Krakoa on 616 Day, Wednesday. with Blurb Without Fear and Verno from T Cerebros. We've done a couple in the Ten of Swords days, and we'll be back for the Hellfire Gala that evening on 616. So you can find that upcoming stream somewhere on the channel. I don't know how YouTube works. It's somewhere on the Comic Book Herald channel, but definitely look for that because that'll be a lot of fun. I am also doing a live interview with New Mutants artist Rod Reese. That will be coming on Sunday. I think it's June 5th. Okay, but I've got that posted on the channel as well officially now. So, set your calendars or just subscribe to the channel and you'll see it. But I will be interviewing Rod live, which should be a lot of fun. I love his art on New Mutants. He's the artist who worked with Hickman on those early New Mutants issues that Hickman wrote. And he is also now doing the run with Vita Ayala, which New Mutants number 17 came out today. And it's very, very good. It's not quite my top tier, most excited X book yet. That right now is Way of X, Sword, Hellions, and X-Men. I would say those four. That's the top tier of X books for me. The ones that when I think about those. Sorry, somebody just in the chat mentioned Tolliver, and I was like, oh man, Magneto did say a TOL word in X-Men 20 today. got the gears turning. Don't read the chat while you're trying to talk and do a solo podcast show. It's quite difficult. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, New Mutants number 17 being good. That's my top tier. Those four. New Mutants is probably the tier right below that. Probably my number 5. I think specifically the Vita Ayala and Rod Reese version. It's been excellent. New Mutants number 17 today. It's really good. It's really good. I like it. It continues to be an interesting comic book. It looks great. Again, Rod is a brilliant artist. There's not necessarily any clear, definite takeaways. I wouldn't say we don't know yet. So there's two kind of plot lines here, and that's the thing about New Mutants in this era too. Is the amount of plot lines they're balancing on an issue to issue basis is kind of mind blowing, and it doesn't feel either overstuffed or convoluted. Somehow it's all maintained very tightly, which is very, very impressive balancing act. The two main threads in 17 are Karma is attempting to get her twin brother's soul, his essence, out of her body. She has absorbed him a number of times. Historically, their debut, these characters debut in 1980 in Marvel Team Up, I think it's 100 with Spider-Man. It ends with Karma absorbing Tron, her twin brother. And you fast forward a billion years to 2018's New Mutants Dead Souls, meaning written by Matt Rosenberg, and Tron and Karma continue to be very much at odds. They go back and forth. Tron has historically acted against Karma, despite the fact that they're twins. But what we're finding now in the Krakoa era is Karma kind of coming to terms with okay, all that stuff's in the past. Let's reconcile all that baggage. Let's move forward, and let's become our own separate people again. And she goes into Crucible with Danny Moonstar, picks Danny to kill her in Crucible in order to try, potentially, to free Tron's essence. Okay, which no psychics have been able to do, Magic Soul Sword hasn't been able to do. So we don't actually get the ending of that, if it's officially worked yet. But it kind of feels like probably it has, which is an interesting development for Karma, a character who really doesn't get enough love, I would say. Karma typically does not get a lot of focus at least in the New Mutants issues that I'm familiar with. And we don't quite know yet either what the Shadow King is plotting. There is an implication that people on Krakoa are cool with the Shadow King being there, Rand Sinclair, for example. Shadow King's got his hooks. He's got his hooks in these kids that he's working with. Now he's got his hooks in Rain, who he's kind of had some conversations with, who's going through a tough time. Right? So is Shadow King actually to be trusted, or does he have his hooks in these mutants who are endorsing him? Because he's not a secret anymore. Rain's straight up told about the Shadow King. She knows. It's not a secret. Amal Farouk, Shadow King, on the island. People know. I mean, I'd be really interested in seeing Karma's reaction to the Shadow King being on the island. Okay, there's a lot of history between these characters. Shadow King, manipulated her, possessed her, turned her. How do I say this easily? Summing up the plot of New Mutants. For a long time, Karma was extremely obese and miserable because of it, and that was Shadow King related. Okay, that's during the Chris Claremont written era. Definitely during the Bill Sienkiewicz days. I don't know how many of those he draws, but the most famous, kind of best New Mutants comics that are out there. There's reason for animosity there. There's also a lot of parallels between Karma and Shadow King and what they're going through right now, right? Karma is trying to get her evil twin brother, and I say that, facetiously, out, okay? Isam al Farouk trying to get the evil Shadow King. Probably didn't need the air quotes on evil Shadow King. Isam al Farouk going through basically the same kind of thing, trying to get the Shadow King out, or is the Shadow King in control, right? And we don't quite have an answer on that either, but it's an interesting parallel, I think. So New Mutants number 17 continues to be very good. The Krakoan for the next issue reads Party Hair, which took me a few translations. Took me a couple. I was like, I don't think that's right, Party Hair. But I think that's going to be in regards to Warlock, our guy. We have not seen enough of Warlock prioritized in the Dawn of X and the Reign of X. We've definitely not seen enough in this era of New Mutants. So give me Rodriguez doing his Bill Sienkiewicz influenced Warlock in the Hellfire Gala issue, New Mutants number 18. I'm looking forward to that. Okay, so there's the New Mutants recap in brief. I think otherwise, I have covered most of what we want to say about Inferno. Thanks so much, everybody, for listening. I greatly, greatly appreciate it. If you do have any final questions, definitely let me know. I will try to scan through as many as I can. But seriously, yeah, thanks to everybody who hopped on. I'm going to go and get some dinner, I think. Ice this voice down so we can do this again next week. But let me know your comments here on the video on X-Men number 20. I'll try to dig through as many as I can. Try to talk about those next week as well. Any good theories or conversations that I have, I definitely like to explore and resurface and of course give credit where I can. So thanks everybody for listening, and as always, enjoy the comics.